This is the No Strings Podcast with Rel Simon. What's up, y'all? Podcast episode 72 of the No Strings Podcast with Rel Simon. It has been a while since I dropped a podcast, episode 71, way back in January of 2026. And so, as always, No Strings Podcast at Rel Simon on TikTok, at @KicksOnCanvas_artistry on Instagram. This podcast is brought to you by Spotify. And it is also available on all your other platforms, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and etc. So, without getting into it, let me get to it. I'm going to get to the main portion of the episode titled A New Location in a moment. But just to update y'all with everything that I've been up to. And I think the one thing that sticks out like a sore thumb is that I'll be going back to physical therapy. So this is being recorded on Sunday, April 12th. And just a year ago, on Wednesday, April 9th, 2025, was when I had my fall roller skating and I fractured my ankle. And I had to go to physical therapy starting on Juneteenth of last year, and it wrapped up about August. So here we go. Starting April 15th, they can figure out what's going on. Ever since March 1st of this year was a trip going up some steps, and I didn't fall, but I kind of might have tweaked my back a little bit, and I need him to figure this out. So, but it feels good right now. And today has just been a nice day. It's a beautiful day outside in DC. Woke up this morning, thank God for that. And also it was a good church service, being able to get church done, get one or two church projects done as well, attend church service. And then after church, went out for a jog. It's outside of football season, me trying to maximize my time and just try to still continue to be a little bit more active, even though it's still a light jog and walk because I don't want to try to overexert anything regarding my back. But, and also here we go. First podcast after a while. So it's a good day. It's been a real good day. And then just two personal things. A big shout out to my Uncle Harvey, for turning 80 years old last week on April 5th. We all went out and had a lunch with him, and just being able to be in his presence and enjoy him in 80 years is something that I can strive to. And I want to be able to have my children and wife and grandkids and everything while he's still around, and to be able to enjoy that. And then also his daughter, shout out to Samira. You know, she's been there. She's been like a sister, like a mom, everything to me. But she was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer last week, and she is going through the processes of getting her, following up with her, all her appointments, and planning to do the route of surgery. So just prayers and thoughts to you. If anyone listening to this podcast, Samira Ware Baylor, she still uses her, both her married and maiden name. She is going through that, and we've sent some cards to her, and just waiting for her surgery and for her recovery. So, okay, here we go with episode 72, titled "A New Location." Something that I thought about a while ago. I took some screenshots way back on March 7th. I was doing some ChatGPT questioning and having conversations with ChatGPT. I got the idea based off of a YouTube channel, Shophocho, SHOPHOCHO. He does food reviews. A Asian American guy, where he says like "justified" or "hell no." But anyway, he did a hack where he pondered imagine the state of Washington. So not DC, where I'm recording, where I live. Not DC for any of y'all listening that live in DC, but Washington State, and then Oregon, how they pretty much touch one another. And so he made a mention that Washington State does not have any income tax. They don't tax you on your income. And the state of Oregon has no sales tax, where they don't charge you for sales for purchasing goods, products, and services. And his hack on that video was, and he lived, one of his main places is Costco. He goes to Costco a lot. What if you lived and worked in Washington, and then you went over to Oregon? Now this place, there's a bridge that connects Oregon to Washington State. I'm sure there's plenty of bridges, but there was like one city is in Oregon, the tip of Oregon, and then that the south part of Washington. You have a body of water separating each other. And so he basically theorized, you do all your shopping at Costco there in the state of Oregon, you don't pay sales tax instead of doing shopping at Costco or anywhere in the state of Washington. But you're living in Washington because you are not getting a hit with any income tax. So that got me thinking. I did some chat GPT and some questioning. And so really for my personal as well, so I know how about taxes. And this is also informational for you as well in terms of where you live. And that's part of the reason why I titled this episode A New Location. Because perhaps the gears start shifting in your brain where will you relocate somewhere else? Will you choose to relocate somewhere else? My boy Emery went from DC to Chicago last year. It's been a year as well. That's been a year as well. And I don't have Chicago's data with me, but it could be possible that their income tax rate is lower than it is in DC. I do have the numbers for DC that I'll share in a moment. My boy Ed has been living, he's done some stints in Vegas. He's done a majority of living down in Florida as well. And that's definitely a decrease compared to DC. And so, I get asked that sometimes, will I relocate somewhere? And to me, there's family everywhere here. Why would I leave? And churches here. Maybe I get a house in Maryland or Virginia instead of like living in DC because I know real estate is so expensive in DC. But could I live somewhere else? I love the Tennessee Titans. I could possibly live in Nashville. But just moving just for football, I have to, and then also it's a red state. I'm not a politics guy. I get it. I understand it. I'll get into that in a second as well. Because there are a bunch of different factors where if you were to move or leave, or if someone listening lived in Baltimore, lived in Florida, or lived wherever, they may want to come and live in D.C. Or they may ask, why do you live in D.C.? Why do you live in New York? Why do you live in Florida? Not Florida, California. Because because of the income tax, the property tax, everything, right? So the cost of living. But anyway, so these are the states with no income tax. And I'll repeat them one more time. But these states don't tax any personal income. Alaska, Florida, Nevada, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Washington, Wyoming. And here I go again. States with no state income tax. Alaska, Florida, Nevada, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Washington, Wyoming. Feel free to pull out your Google Maps because you may be able to do somewhat of a hack if you kind of position yourself as to where you think you may want to live, right? Maybe you live in one of those 8 states. Now, these are states with no statewide sales tax, and I'll repeat those again as well. Alaska, Delaware, Montana, New Hampshire, Oregon. There's only 5. Alaska, Delaware, Montana, New Hampshire, and Oregon. What do we take away from that? Alaska has no personal income tax or state sales tax. But there is a caveat that there may be some local taxes and local employer taxes as well. The other caveat is that in states with no income tax, you may end up paying sales tax. You may end up paying a higher property tax. So that's where some of it may come in. You may not be getting hit on the income, but you're probably paying higher property taxes if you own property. And of course, every state, they do charge federal taxes. So when it's tax time, which it is coming up very soon on the 15th, I've been doing my taxes. I'll be at physical therapy. Y'all get y'all taxes in by this Wednesday, April 15th. You still get charged federal payroll taxes. That's just unavoidable anywhere in the U.S. And the state income taxes is where you live. So, and ChatGPT is helping me out again where if you combine income tax and sales tax and property taxes, that is called your quote unquote total state tax burden. So states with the lowest tax burden, where you may have a mix of income and sales and property, or neither no income or no sales, as one of the ones on one of our lists. But this is the ranking. Alaska at 4.9%, New Hampshire 5.6%, Wyoming 5.7%, Florida 6.6%, Florida at 6% even, Tennessee 6.1%, Delaware 6.4%, North Dakota 6.4%, South Dakota 6.4%, North Dakota 6.8%, Oklahoma 7.0%, Nevada 7.3%. So Nevada's kind of in the Midwest to the west. We know where Alaska is. We know where New Hampshire is, up in the upper northeast. Florida's in the south. Tennessee is in the kind of like the south. Delaware is definitely on the east. North Dakota, South Dakota, Oklahoma, kind of like sort of in the middle. I just mentioned Tennessee. I could see myself living in Tennessee if I can bear the income tax, sales tax, property tax burden. Or rather the sales tax and property tax burden, since in Tennessee does not have any income tax. But could you live in Alaska? Could you live in New Hampshire? Could you do a hack? Like I mentioned earlier, could you live in Washington State, but you do most, if not all, or half, or at least half of your shopping in the state of Oregon? How about Wyoming and Montana? Because we know Wyoming has no state income tax. Montana has no state sales tax. If you were living in adjacent to or near the borderlines of both states, could you live in Wyoming and then shop in Montana? If we bring it locally here, let's say you live in Baltimore, South Jersey, Philadelphia, or southeastern Pennsylvania, we know that Delaware has no sales tax. You know, Delaware's tax-free state, right? So could you do a bunch of your shopping in Delaware? Now, I'm not saying go grocery shopping all the time or whatever, but maybe your bigger purchases, maybe your Costco, maybe when you're going to an outlet, maybe if you're getting clothes and stuff like that, right? It's definitely important to think about. And again, property taxes is heavy. Now, high tax states, you've got these states that take the largest share of residents' income: New York, Hawaii, Vermont, California, and Maine. Vermont and Maine, typically up in the upper northeast. That I did not know. We know horror stories about New York, cost of living and everything. We know about California. We know about the political party. We know about the cost of living. We know about how, I think, was it Joshua Wiseman, famous YouTube cook, went from formerly California, then living in Texas. But we get plenty of instances like that. Like you leaving out of California so you can go live in Texas or relocate to Texas. Likely with lower property taxes and no state income tax in Texas, right? And Hawaii is so interesting because it costs a lot to visit Hawaii. It costs a lot to live in Hawaii as well. Now, let's say you're a DC, you're making 90 grand, maybe you're making 100 grand, right? So DC income tax could be up to 10.75%. And I believe that is it's on like a progressive scale, a progressive income tax, for ranging from 4% to 10.75%. And then DC also has a 6% sales tax, which that is going to increase to 6.5%. Actually has already increased via Google, if it hasn't already, 6.5%. And a 0.6 effective property tax rate. So that's a high income tax rate for DC. According to Rocket Mortgage, the effective tax rate, they rate the state of New Jersey with a 2.23% effective tax rate, followed by Illinois 2.07, Connecticut 1.92, and New Hampshire 1.77, and fifth, Vermont with 1.71. And then also, let's also consider your political party. I mean, I do vote as a Democrat. If I move to Tennessee, That's a primarily red state, according to usafacts.org. Data, states by party representation in the Senate, December 9th, 2025. Where they have currently in the House power majority, where in Tennessee there's more senators. Currently in North Carolina, it's the same thing. However, you do know there's a high black population down in North Carolina. So, your political party may play a role as well. If you live in the Deep South, if you live in the Confederate South, we know what type of skin tone, right? Or perhaps you live in Atlanta, there's a difference. Or perhaps you live in Chicago, right? Do you say you sort of, or you live in California, you say these cities out and you kind of get a feel for it. We know how Florida is. Florida's a real red state. So, the reason, part of it is, I always say DC wants to be so much like a hybrid of California and New York. The cost of living is crazy. You've got the conflict in Iran where gas prices are at least $4 a gallon throughout the U.S. And who knows how long that conflict will go. That's starting to affect people's livelihoods. You still got a bunch of layoffs at a bunch of different places. You've had the shutdown. The Department of Homeland Security, they couldn't reach an agreement. And you've had the TSA shutdown. Well, TSA was already dealing with a shutdown back in October, right? Something that I was affected by. I don't work for TSA, but it's something that I was affected by. And you have all this chaos and you have all this unrest. And at the same time, from a financial standpoint, you've got these videos like what the teacher on Twitter, African American teacher makes $7,500 a month, and she's trying to figure out how to balance her checkbook, and she's riding around in a G-Wagon and X, Y, and Z. I just saw another video on Jason Black's channel, The Business, where someone's trying to had a $15,000 bill for the G-Wagon because they needed some new brakes and other maintenance on the vehicle. And so a lot of this is factored into it. A lot of people are homey. Some people are nomadic and they will move. For me, I have such an attachment to DC in this area where I could move. I think it would be very difficult. I do see someone again like my boy Emery, where he was able to do it. My boy Ed got family up here and he was able to do it as well. And I'm sure there's examples of other people as well that have relocated. Shout out to Anidra, visual VFX artist for plenty of film projects. She's been living in Cali for a while. She stepped on a limb years ago, way before the pandemic, and decided to move to California because there was more of an opportunity there, including her stints or her opportunities in Atlanta for working with Marvel Studios and other different studios. And so I think really just to wrap it up and put a bow on it, it's an interesting proposition if you are in a financial space where if you feel like you're burdened and you're not like a bunch of debt and you feel like you're in a space where you can move, and of course you need that job, right? That job, the degree matters as well. But I implore you to really take a look. You may end up not trying to do necessarily a hack, but you may end up living or trying out Alaska, Florida, Nevada, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Washington, Wyoming, Delaware, Montana, New Hampshire, or Oregon, just for the benefit where there's no sales tax there. Again, and perhaps you rent and you don't pay any property taxes, right? But of course, you still gonna be paying Medicaid, Medicare, giving to a little bit out of your check towards Social Security, and of course, when tax time is due, you're paying federal income tax. Federal income tax will come out of your check. But as we think about ways to save money, location is key. And perhaps you ask yourself, is it time for a new location? Do you live in Virginia and it's time to move to Maryland? Do you live in D.C. and it's time to move to Maryland? Do you live in D.C. and it's time to move to Virginia? Do you live in Virginia and it's time to move to D.C.? Do you live in Maryland and it's time to move to D.C.? Do you live in D.C. and it's time to move to Baltimore? Do you live in Maryland and it's time to move to probably West Virginia? Do you live in Virginia and it's time to move to West Virginia? How do you see it, right? You have a lot of people think about it as a hack, not necessarily income or state's tax, because both states charge both. But New Jersey, right? The state of New Jersey, if you're able to get a New Jersey Transit and you take an hour-long, 25, 30-minute long commute, perhaps you live in Jersey City, perhaps you live in Hoboken or Newark or a little bit farther. Maybe you live in Madison, right? Shout out Drew University. But your job is in downtown New York. You're in Manhattan or something, and you take the commute every morning and you're going to work. You work in New York, possibly higher income, but then you come back home to New Jersey. There are thousands of people that do that every single day. Even keeping it here, obviously, right? I've got coworkers, right? They work in DC, but they live in Maryland because it's cheaper cost of living in Maryland, and the same thing for Virginia, a little cheaper cost of living in Virginia, or the DC to Baltimore connection. And so it's an interesting dynamic. Like, you definitely, for me, it's broadening my horizons, and as I continue to develop and grow, hopefully my situation blooms and I'm able to have a family and whatnot, that those are things I think about and possibly ponder, that can't be chained to one place. And of course, on this podcast, we all about saving money. You're trying to, even though y'all got to get with me, man, because this week was Topps Chrome 2026 WWE. And I spent over $1,500 between product and buying in breaks between Whatnot and Fanatics Live. $1,500. I'm going to have to do a little bit of recalibration with the finances again and get myself back on track and just take a breather, because this was uncharted territory. And addictions are real. Some people got the gambling addictions. I got the breaking and the sports card addictions, wrestling card addictions, right? Whatever. Trading card addictions. So that's my vice I got to handle, because if I get into any of a deeper of a hole, maybe I might be moving somewhere else with no state income tax, I don't know. I think a cardboard box might fit me pretty well. I don't know. But nah, that's all I got for you, right? A new location. Will I be moving to a new location soon? Will you be moving to a new location soon? Think about those states. Be kind, rewind. Think about no state income tax. Think about no state sales tax. Different ways where you can kind of make your money stretch a little bit further. There's always caveats. And of course, one of the biggest hacks as well is that the more you put into retirement, the more you take advantage of tax advantage accounts. That's another little hack as well. So you kind of add that to the pot, and that can sweeten your cause and sweeten your deal to try and keep as much income in your pocket, not only for the present, but only for the future. But also for the future. All right, y'all. That's all I got for you. Podcast episode 72. I will try to be more frequent as I think about the next type of episodes I want to get to and talk about. But thank y'all for listening. I'm gonna get through this physical therapy. But all right, y'all. Until I catch y'all on the next one. And don't forget, get your taxes done. Do your taxes this week. Get them done. Get them submitted. All right, y'all. Y'all take care. And have a great day. Peace. Thank you for listening to the No Strings Podcast with Rel Simon.